The kitchen was warm and inviting, the smell of freshly brewed coffee and sizzling bacon filling the air. Yuan hummed softly as she flipped the pancakes, a small smile on her lips. She had woken up early to make everything perfect. Today was special, Jungkook's off day. In their few months of Today was special, Jungkook's day off. In their 7 months of marriage, these days were rare treasures. Being an CEO of leading company meant his life revolved around meeting deadlines and an endless stream of emails. He barely had time to breathe, let alone spend time with her. But today, for once, he was supposed to be hers. Hyun had dressed up nicely, wearing a soft pastel dress that she knew suited her well. She had even added a touch of makeup, something she rarely bothered with. She wasn't one for grand gestures, but she wanted to make effort in this relationship. Their marriage wasn't a love story out of fairy tale. It was an arranged match, one they both agreed to without resistance. They hadn't been in love, but there was no animosity either. They shared an unspoken understanding, a quiet companionship between them. She glanced at the clock, a small smile tugging at her lips. Jungkook should be waking up at any moment. Just as she placed the pancakes on the plate, she heard footsteps approaching. Her smile widened, but when she turned, her expression froze. There he was, walking into the kitchen, not in the comfortable clothes as she had hoped to see him in, but in his crisp work suit, his tie slightly under and his phone in hand. Good morning, Jungkook mumbled, barely glancing at her as she tapped away on his phone. Jungkook, why are you dressed for work? He looked up, settled by her tone. Oh, I have a few things to take care of at the office. I wouldn't be gone long. Her chest tightened as disappointed washed over her. But it's your day off. I'm sorry, Yuan. I really am, but this is important. I will make it up to you. Jungkook hesitated, his phone buzzing in his hand. She sang, the weight of his words so familiar now, pressing down on her. You always say that, she whispered, almost to herself. I will see you later. With that, he turned and left, not sparing her a second glance. The sound of the door closing echoed through the quiet apartment, leaving Yuan standing alone in the kitchen. She sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping as she stared at the breakfast meant for two. Sometimes, she murmured, her voice barely audible. It really hurts. She sat down at the table, her appetite gone, wondering if Jungkook would ever realize just how much his absence killed her. The tears she had been holding back all morning finally slipped down her cheeks. Why always girls have to understand them? Why can't they give their girl time? They never share relationship like husband and wife, but they respect each other. Is respect is only thing she needed. Yuan sat on the bed in the dimly light guest room, and the silence pressing heavily on her. She felt the crushing weight of always being second in his life, always waiting, always hoping. Jungkook had never meant to hurt her. She knew that. But intention didn't change the reality. She couldn't keep going like this, pretending it was okay, pretending she was okay when she wasn't. Maybe this is just what life is like when you are married to someone ambitious. But is it really unreasonable to want him to be here when he said he would? To want to feel seen, wanted, loved? The question grounded at her, tearing her apart. Did this marriage mean anything to him? A knock at the door settled her out of her spiraling thought. "Yuan," came Jungkook's voice, muffled but urgent from the other side of the door. "Open the door. I need to talk to you." She froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her eyes darted to the door, but she didn't move. "Yuan, please," he said again, his tone softer this time. "I really want to talk to you." Her body tensed as she crawled further onto the bed, pulling her knees to her chest. She didn't answer. She didn't want to see him, didn't want to hear his apologies or excuses. Not now. Not when she felt like her heart was breaking. Jungkook sang. "I know you are mad. I know I messed up," he said, his voice strained. "But I need you to know how sorry I am. I don't want to lose you, Yuan." Her throat tightened at his words, tears welling up in her eyes again, but she still didn't move. She hugged her knees tighter, willing herself to stay silent, not give in. "I will wait," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "I will wait as long as you need, but please don't shout me out completely." Yuan closed her eyes, the sound of his footsteps retreating down the hall filling the room. She pressed her face against her knees, her tears finally silently. She didn't know what to do, didn't know how to bridge the growing distance between them. All she knew was that her heart was tired, and for now she just needed space to breathe. The sunlight streamed into the living room, casting soft shadows across the furniture. Jungkook stared awake on the couch, the stiffness in his head neck reminding him of the uncomfortable night. He blinked groggily, his eyes falling on the blanket draped over him and his neatly placed shoes on the floor. A sad smile crept onto his face. "No matter how angry she is, she still cares for me." He sat up, running a hand through his hair, and glanced towards the kitchen. His breath caught when he saw Yuan standing by the stove, her movements calm and methodically as she cooked breakfast. Jungkook immediately stood, his heart pounding. He hesitated for a moment, watching her from the doorway, unsure of what to say or do. Gathering his courage, he stepped forward. "Yuan," he started, his voice soft but strained. She turned to look at him, her expression calm and distant, her eyes giving nothing away. "Breakfast is ready," she said evenly, as if nothing had happened. She turned back to the stove, placing the dish on the dining table and arranging everything with precision. Jungkook noticed the difference instantly. There was no warmth in her tone, no gentle smile or affectionate glance. It felt like she was fulfilling a duty rather than caring for him as she always did. His chest tightened as she began to walk away, clearly avoiding any conversation. Acting on instinct, he reached out and gently grabbed her hand, stopping her in her tracks. "Yuan, please," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She paused but didn't look at him. Then she turned her head slightly, just enough for him to see the sadness in her eyes. "Jungkook, I think we both need some time." Jungkook's heart skipped a beat. The ground beneath him seemed to shifting. His throat tightened and his voice cracked as he stammered. "Oh, what do you mean?" Yeon sang, lowering her eyes to the floor. "We need time to think, Jungkook, about our relationship, about us. If we can continue like this or not." His throat tightened and his voice cracked as he stammered. "Don't say that," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his heart pounding as he gently took her hand in his. Her skin was warm against his, but he could feel the hesitation in her touch. Slowly, he lifted her hand and placed a soft kiss on it. Yuan flinched slightly at the unexpected gesture, her heart betraying her resolve with a sudden rush of warmth. Her pulse quickened, her breath hitching for just a moment. But she quickly pulled herself together, reminding herself of the hurt she would carried for so long. Jungkook held onto her hand, his grip tender but desperate. I know I have hurt you. I know I deserve this, but please let me make it up to you. You have given enough, Yuan. Now it's my turn to show you what you mean to me. Yuan looked at him, her heart torn between her love for him and the pain he had caused. I promise I wouldn't disappoint you. I will prove it every single day in every way I can. Just don't give up on us, not it. He said, his voice filled with guilt, but sincerity wasn't always enough to heal the cracks in a relationship. She gently pulled her hand away, stepping back to put some distance between them. She didn't say anything, just nodded, then turned around and walked away. Jungkook stood rooted to the spot, his heart heavy with regret but also a flicker of determination. He wouldn't lose her, not without a fight. Jungkook had been trying, really trying. For the past few days, he had done everything he could think of to show Yuan that he meant what he said. He adjusted his work schedule, refusing to take calls during meals. He surprised her with her favorite coffee in the morning, left small notes of appreciation on the kitchen counter, and even took over the household chores, something he had barely touched before. He was home earlier every evening, trying to bridge the gap that had grown between them. But no matter what he said, Yuan remained distant. She acknowledged his efforts with a nod or a quiet thank you, but there was no warmth behind her words, no flicker of the affection they once shared. She wasn't rude or dismissive, but everything about her felt off-guarded, as though she had built an invisible wall around herself. Jungkook walked into the apartment, a bright smile on his face as he held a bouquet of Yuan's favorite flowers. He had carefully picked them out, imagining her face lighting up with joy when she saw them. It has been so long since he had seen her truly happy, and he was determined to bring a little bit of that happiness back. As soon as he entered in the house, he saw his parents were sitting in the living room, chatting with Ian. She was laughing at something his parent had said, her eyes lightening up. It was a sight Jungkook hadn't seen in weeks. For a moment, his heart lifted, relief washing over him. But then it hit him like a ton of bricks. This happiness wasn't because of him. If anything, he had been the one to take it away. He stood there, rooted to the spot, guilt and regret swirling in his chest. His mother was the first to notice him. Jungkook, she exclaimed with a wide smile. You are home? Look who decided to surprise you. Yan turned her head towards him, and the moment their eyes met, her laughter faded. She looked down at her lap. Jungkook's heart shattered. He hated that he was the reason for her change. How are you, Mom, Dad? We are fine, but what's that in your hand, son? He gestured toward the bouquet, a teasing grin spreading across his face. Jungkook glanced at the flowers and forced a spaceship smile. Oh, these are for Yan. Wow, our son's become romantic, his mother teased, nudging his father with a juggle. He never used to do things like this before. Jungkook smiled, looked at Yan. He walked towards her and gave her the flower. These are for you. Yan slowly took the bouquet from him. Thank you, she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. She glanced at the flowers, her cheeks tinted with a shy blush. His mother clapped her hands together, beaming. Look at you two, how sweet. I didn't know our son could be so thoughtful. Once if they knew the truth, Jungkook thought bitterly, forcing a tight-lipped smile. The soft click of the door opening drew Jungkook's attention. He looked up, and his heart skipped a beat when he saw Yuan hesitantly stepping in the room. She hadn't set foot in their shared room since the night everything fell apart, and now seeing her there felt like a glimmer of hope. Yuan glanced around nervously. She felt awkward being back in the space they once shared. They are happy with memories of happier times, but with his parents staying over, she knew she had to keep up appearances. Jungkook, on the other hand, couldn't hide the small, genuine smile on his face. You came, he said softly, his voice filled with an emotion he couldn't quite put into words. Yuan nodded. I missed you in this room, Yuan, he said, his voice tender, almost vulnerable. She looked at him. Can you sit here? He asked hesitantly, patting the edge of the bed. She hesitated for a moment before sitting down. Gathering his courage, he did something that surprised even himself. Without saying a word, he kneeled down in front of her and rested his head gently on her lap. Yuan sniffed at her breath, hitching at the unexpected gesture. What are you? Just let me stay like this for a moment, he murmured, his voice muffled against the fabric of her dress. Please. She froze, unsure of what to do. Her hands hovered awkwardly, not knowing whether to push him away or let them rest on his head. I know I have hurt you, he said quietly, his voice laced with pain. And I know you are here because of my parents, not because you want to be. But having you here, even like this, it means everything to me, Yuan. I have missed you so much. Yuan felt her chest tighten. She don't know what to say without realizing it. Yuan's fingers began brushing through his hair. It was a subconscious gesture, on one she used to do often when they were on better terms. As she looked down at him, Yuan couldn't help but notice how much he had changed. His once work-focused demeanor had softened. He had been putting in so much effort to mend their broken relationship, adjusting his priorities, making time for her, and showing her in countless small ways that he cared. Sometimes one push is all it takes for someone to change, she thought, and Jungkook, he is proof of that. Her heart swelled with a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and love. She had forgiven him a long time ago, though she had never told him. She wasn't sure why she had kept it to herself, but seeing him now, so vulnerable and desperate for her forgiveness, broke her heart all over again. Jungkook's muffled voice broke the silence. Yuan, he whispered, his tone shaky. Tell me what I can do. Tell me what it will take for you to forgive me. I will do everything. Just say the word. Her hand froze in his hair for a moment, her chest tightened. You don't have to do anything, Jungkook, she said softly, her voice trembling. He lifted his hair slightly, his tear-streaked face looking up at her in confusion. She looked into his eyes, her own glistening with unshed tears. I forgive you, Jungkook, she said simply, her voice firm yet gentle. His breath caught, his wooden eyes searching hers for any hint of doubt or hesitation, but there was none. You do? He asked, his voice breaking. She nodded, her hand cupping his face now. I forgave you a long time ago. I didn't know how to tell you, and honestly, I wanted to see if you truly meant it, if you would change because you wanted to, not because you thought it would fix things between us. Jungkook's lips parted as he stared at her, tears welling up again, brushing her thumb gently across his cheek. She wiped the tears from his face. You have been trying so hard, Jungkook. I say that, and it means everything to me. I love you, he said, his voice unwavering and filled with raw emotion. His sudden confession made Yuan breathe haste, but then she smiled softly. I love you too, she whispered. Hearing those words from her made Jungkook's heart soar. He sat up beside her, his hand reaching out to gently cup her cheek. Yuan didn't pull away. her gaze softening as she felt his thumb brush against her skin. Slowly, as if giving her the chance to stop him, Jungkook leaned in. When their lips finally met, it was gentle yet passionate, a kiss filled with all the unspoken feelings, the longing and the love they had both kept bottled up. Hyun's eyes fluttered shut, her hand resting lightly on his chest as she kissed him back. The warmth of her touch, the tenderness in his kiss, it all felt so familiar, so right. When they pulled away, their foreheads rested against each other, their breaths mingling in the quiet room. Jungkook gently laid Yuan down on the bed, his movements careful as if she may disappear if he wasn't gentle enough. He leaned over her, his eyes filled with love before placing his head on her shoulder. Wrapping his arms securely around her waist, he pulled her closer, as if trying to melt her into him. Yuan's heart fluttered at the warmth of his embrace, her own hands resting lightly on his back. He began pressing soft, feather-like kisses on her cheek, her forehead, and even her nose, each one bringing a smile to her lips. "Let me just hug you tightly and kiss you today," Jungkook murmured, his voice playful but laced with sincerity. His words made Ivan giggle softly and the sound filling the room like a melody. Jungkook didn't know he needed to hear. "You're going to suffocate me if you hug me tightly," she said, wrapping her hand around his torso. "Good," he said, while giving her more kisses on her face, making her laugh again. The night stretched on with stolen kisses, whispered confessions, and soft laughter. The tension between them finally dissolving into warmth and love as they held each other under the dim glow of the bedsheet lamp. Both of them felt a sense of peace they hadn't felt in weeks. Sometimes it takes facing our deepest hurts to realize how much love we have it to give. Relationships aren't perfect, but the effort to heal, grow, and cherish each other is what truly matters.